Guys, we're here with child labor. We're here, Alan has brought his children to work. So officially we're now a proper startup. Anyway, welcome to What the Theory with your man Joel. I'm Joel, and today we're going to be asking what the theory is behind startup culture.
Are you ready for the ultimate tech startup competition? Let me hear it. Disrupt!
Now, I personally have worked in a number of startups. I have supported the space. I am currently working in one. So please understand that I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but there's a lot of bathwater that we need to throw out, some stuff that we need to analyze. So in today's episode, I'm just going to try and break down a few things that I've noticed in different chapters, and you can let me know what you think in the comments below. Please be nice. Look at me. I'm a nice guy. Don't abuse me. Or if you're going to abuse me, at least say things that are interesting. Like come up with something unique. So, startups. The main word that I think about when I hear startups is disruption. Disruption. And I couldn't help but think about how long that word has been in my life. And as far as I can tell, it's since the 1990s that the word disruptive culture has come to being. And it's really about bringing up some new innovation, creating some new technology that's going to change the face of how we do things. It's not enough for you to just have a nice app. It's not enough for you to have just a nice business, but it's got to be revolutionary. And today I was actually reading a story about a company called Dash in Ghana, where they had raised $86 million, and it's shutting down. In part because the person who was running the company, allegedly the founder, was paying himself about $50,000 a day. Now you compare that with stories that we're hearing out of allegations on Flutterwave, things that are happening in FTX when it comes to crypto. It just all seems like a house of cards falling apart. And the question I was asking myself is that, I'm in this space, I've seen it grow over time. Is it actually leading to the results that we thought that we were going to get? Is it just a place for scammers to make a lot of money and then, take off? So I think we'll start with disruptive innovation. That'll be the first chapter. And when we try to describe what disruptive innovation means, I'm going to use something here from Joseph Schumpeter. And he says that in capitalist reality, as distinguished from its textbook picture, it is not the kind of competition that counts, but rather the competition from the new commodity, the new technology, the new source of supply, the new type of organization that makes things change. Now, disruptive innovation had always been thought of as something that, disruptions have happened all through life. The first person who invented the wheel, or the person who discovered the steam engine, or the person who did the Gutenberg press, changed everything. However, over time, this has now become something that is talked about in the business world. Entrepreneurs, investors, big business are now talking about taking over and taking disruptive innovation. They want to disrupt themselves before they're disrupted. Business Insider distinguishes between innovation and invention because often we talk about the person who invented something and the person who innovated. And this is what it says. Innovation is distinguished from invention, even if the inventor and the innovator is the same person. Innovation is widened to the commercial application and the marketing of any new idea. To achieve this commercial application, the innovator or entrepreneur must get financing or credit and convince investors or venture capitalists that profits will be forthcoming in the immediate or near future. Now, if you talk about the difference, invention is sort of the creation of a product or introduction of a new process, whereas innovation happens when someone improves or makes a significant change to something that was already working. So you'll get someone like Thomas Edison, invented the light bulb. I put that in quotes because there are many things to ask there. And then you've got Steve Jobs, who wasn't an engineer, but was an innovator. He was able to apply different ideas or different processes to things that already exist without necessarily inventing anything new. And Steve Jobs, I think, is the place that we should start because the ethos that he created of a grand vision, of a great man who has a story and is fighting against the odds, and you've got that idea, you're pursuing it with a lot of gusto. I think he's the one who said that you should make your dent in the universe, which is an interesting thing for me, especially having been a Christian. I see there's a shift in culture now where it's not enough for you to live your own life or take care of your family or have a nice humble ambition. You have to make a dent in the universe, like a dent in everything, and that's going to be your legacy. That's what's going to last. And incidentally, that dent in the universe also means you're going to make a lot of money. Now, the paradoxical law of disruption is that it keeps entrepreneurs and investors alike sort of running for the next thing. There's a promise of getting large windfall returns, and because of that, you're able to eschew all kinds of morals, all kinds of ethics, everything that you think you need to do to get there makes it make sense. In Uganda, in Kampala, we always say, this is business. And usually when that phrase is used, this is business, it means, well, don't put in your personal feelings, don't bring in too many ethics, don't overthink it, just push forward. Now, disruptive innovation, if you look at the 1990s, became a culture when the likes of Microsoft, Apple, and Google got big. And that was the rise of the internet. And it was this whole new domain in which business could take over. And with the business crashes that happened in the early 90s and then in 2008 with the financial crisis, people were left wary. They didn't know, where they were going to get their next meal. Yeah, with the collapse of unions in the Reagan era, which is the neoliberal era, where individuals are forced to say, well, it is not forced, but encouraged to think of themselves as self-entrepreneurs, as people who could, make their way in the world, and you don't need to have all these encumbrances. You don't need to negotiate as a group, but as an individual. Now, the combination of that and the collapsing wages, the fact that productivity was going high, but wages were remaining stagnant, add the financial crisis that happened in 2008, and it was ripe for people to get into the gig economy. Now, with the gig economy, it means that you're working for an enterprise, you're making money on the side, but you're not an employee. You're not enjoying the benefits that were, so hard fought by different unions over the years to get you the right to get health insurance, the right for you to get a pension, the right for you to get sick leave, etc., etc. Now, that confluence of events has led to rising numbers of deals being made. In 2020, I believe it was about $156.2 billion was raised in the United States alone for startups. And most of these startups were tech startups looking to disrupt some field. I'm sure you've heard of Uber and Airbnb. There was the time when something was the new Airbnb of something, or we're the Uber of laundry, or we're the Uber of food delivery. Look at Uganda, for instance, where we've got Jumia, who's sort of disrupting the space for food deliveries. You've got Safe Border, who's trying to organize transportation. Now, each of these are trying to disrupt the fields that they're in, and disruption sounds good, but more often than not, for the investors, it's disruption that means the returns, the gains from that chaos are going to go unilaterally to the shareholders in that space. And that's why Uber, for instance, has taken over 15 years for them to ever get profit. Airbnb, I think, only recorded a profit a few years ago, because the idea is once you take over the market, once you create a monopoly over it, then you can start to reap the rewards from it. But I think if we take a philosophical view of this, right, there is a sort of dialectic that's happening there. And for those Hegelian fans here, I'm going to use the thesis, antithesis, synthesis bit. I know that's not proper dialectics, but stay with me. So the idea behind dialectics is you've got a thesis, you've got a certain status quo. A set of contradictions probably exist there. And the state of affairs in the world were you've got large banks, you've got large enterprises that dominate spaces. They're producing shitty products, no one is really utilizing them, but they have no option because that's all that's available. And then you get an antithesis, something that goes against the dominant narrative, something that says that you need to be a young, fast, up-and-coming startup. Think how Mark Zuckerberg talked about move fast and break things. That is the very opposite of what an established company is trying to do. They're trying to make sure that everything they do is careful, is risk managed, and is going to maximize returns for them. So when you have that dialectic, that conversation between the two, the young, fast, and up-and-coming is able to outmove, outpace, and outlast a large enterprise that takes so much more time to turn around. And then, funny enough, you end up with a synthesis. And the synthesis that we're now seeing is that the largest corporations in the world are trying to make innovation part of their DNA. They understand that change is always happening and they want to be at the forefront of it. The question that we have, though, is that if this disruptive innovation is actually helping and bringing humanity to where it needs to go. There are very big goals, very vast, ambitious ways in which we hear companies like FTX companies talking about, giving you new financial freedom, that fortune favors the bold. And as you try to, make your way in the world as a self-entrepreneur, that using these products are a way for you to, become your own boss. When I was a student, at some point, I was working on Fiverr, which was, a sort of gig platform that allowed you to sell your skills and say, well, I can do copywriting, I can do business analysis for you, and you get paid for that work. Now, the interesting thing about that was, at a certain point, I realized that I was working alongside thousands of people, but there was no way for us to sit together and sort of unionize. There was no way for us to sort of say, well, we have our gripes with this industry. It meant that we had to have those engagements one-on-one. There was no collective voice. There was no way for us to collectively get what we wanted, get better pay, get better results, get better analytics. And ironically, what's sort of happening is some of the practices that were decried by the up-and-coming startups are the ones that we're seeing the once startups who have become big tech giants or have become dominant players start to take advantage of. The difference is, for a lot of them, the dynamics are very different. Now, if we look at Africa, for instance, you will see recently, like with OpenAI. OpenAI came out talking about ChatGPT, and I use ChatGPT from time to time. And it obscures the fact that what you're interacting with is not an intelligent machine. It seems intelligent because it has conversational characteristics, but it's more like a stochastic parrot. If you can Google that, you get a very nice breakdown of what that means. But it's a way of, it's random, but it's going according to a probability stretch. So it means that these string of words tend to work together, and it relays that back to you. Now, for that stochasticism to be done, at the back end, there are a lot of people, usually low-wage laborers, particularly in Kenya, who have to go through volumes of data. Just like with Meta, who has several cases that they're answering in the Kenyan court about abuses that they're giving to their staff. You never really see that. All you see is the platform. All you see is something coming to you cheaply. I use Uber from time to time. And one of the things I've always asked myself is, how is an Uber ride from Kololo to Chanja just 3K? I don't understand how they're making money off of that. Or the last time I took an Uber ride, it was about 7,000 for me to move from Pioneer Mall all the way to Acacia Mall, and that's because there was traffic. And I remember the driver was asking me to pay off the application, and I was trying to ask him why. And he was basically saying that the time it takes for them to get that money back, the way they are remitted, is really not good. So a lot of people work off the app because to give me a good enough service, like I mentioned, these companies are trying to maximize scale. They're trying to maximize uptake. So in actual effect, it's costing them money to offer me a ride. On every ride, they're actively paying me to utilize their product, which is great for me as a consumer, but it also removes me from the plight of the people that are working in these industries. And that's something that I've been thinking about more and more, even as I work in this startup space. There are incentives that push you towards minimizing your cost and maximizing your return. And the unfortunate thing is costs can be seen as human beings, labor costs. And yesterday, for instance, I was talking to someone about how they're managing their business model, and they've said that they can't hire people full time. They're just going to use the contract approach. Now imagine you have separate contractors working for you. None of them can come together to unionize. The fact is you're going to grow based off of their labor. And I suppose for us, on this channel, one of the things that we always ask is, yes, growth, but at what cost? Is all growth necessary? Is this the kind of relations of production that we want to have? I'm not so sure that's the kind of thing I want to be a part of. The next thing is there's a similarity between disruptive innovation and multi-level marketing. Now, multi-level marketing, those are the guys who are like, you might buy certain health products. As you sell them, you obviously get paid, but as you get more and more people onto the service, they also get to remit to you part of their commission. So if I'm selling skulls and then I get 5 other people to sell those skulls, the money that they're going to be earning is going to be coming up to me. Now, obviously, as you get more and more people down the chain, it's harder and harder for them to make returns. But for every return they make, it comes back to you. But the similarity I would want to say with multi-level marketing is that it's clearly a scam. Most multi-level marketing schemes, like 99% of them, I think according to the FTC, end up collapsing with only a few people making returns. Similarly, when we look at the startup culture that's emerging in Nairobi, in Kigali, in Kampala, in Africa, one of the things I'm noticing is we're not only taking the good, but the bad as well. I think the cops have come from... I'm spilling secrets. Anyway, the good and the bad. So the good is, I think, encouraging people to think about new spaces, new ways to take ownership of our own community, ownership of our own businesses, making people entrepreneurs. I'm all for that. And when you look at things like mobile money, when you look at banked wallet transactions, when you look at SACCOs, I mean, it's a way for people to get included into a financial services system that has excluded them for the longest time. But the drawback is a lot of the returns that are coming to those companies are not domiciled here. They're going to people who you probably have never seen. Now that relates to the structure of how capital is raised. And I think the onus is on us to see how we can have more capital markets here so that the people who are beholden to building these products and services are also people who are going to see the effects of it. If I own a service in Nepal and I've never been to Nepal, I'm less likely to care what the social effects of whatever I'm producing in Nepal is going to be. But if I'm living here, I'm more likely to have an interest in how things are going to turn out. So I'm not calling them a scam, but the space is ripe with so many scammers because especially in fintech, in which I work, you've got two industries that are prone to hype and obfuscation: finance and technology. So when you combine those two, the promises of returns, the promises of how it's going to make for blue skies and it's going to give you complete independence, yes, it's aspirational. But I think the more aspirational something is, the more critically we have to examine about what kind of relations of production are we going to be creating. There's a book called The Innovator's Dilemma, and that's one of the big books that talked about disruptive innovation and made it a big rallying cry around startup culture. But if you read the book, and I did, it's by Chris Christensen, and the argument he makes is compelling in terms of, look, you've got established entities that are just looking to maintain their position, and then you've got new organizations that are younger, that are hungrier, that are more in tune with what people want. But when he uses the evidence, when you look at the evidence he pulls together, any statistics student, any student of research would find that there's a problem with applying a theory and then looking for data to back up that theory. You are meant to look at all the data, and with that data, be able to build up a hypothesis that can allow you to do predictions. And there is a circular reasoning happening within startup culture. And a lot of it is, well, you can never fail. Anything that seems like a failure is actually a lesson. So anytime something goes wrong, you're learning something new. If something succeeds, well, it was always meant to succeed. If an established company is still dominating a certain space, it's just for now. Like, the fall is inevitable, it's going to be coming. And any theory that's worth anything should give you a predictive lens to understand that something is going to go wrong here. And his theory sort of excluded a lot of information. It's sort of like the winners get to determine the stories. You'll hear about Steve Jobs, you'll hear about Mark Zuckerberg, but you won't hear about the hundreds of thousands of people who've tried and failed. And particularly for Uganda, where we've got a very young population, it's impossible for us to think that we're going to entrepreneur our way out of this mess. Yes, private capital and private entrepreneurship is important, but it's not the only thing. We've got to have a good business enabling environment. The government needs to be involved in this as well. And switching lenses quite a little bit as to who is supposed to be doing innovation. It sounds like innovation and disruption is a role left to the private sector. And largely that's for a reason, because the private sector is looking at the advantages that capital is going to get as a return from investing in things. Think about payments that are now being managed by different fintechs. Think about food deliveries. Think about even the internet. Most of the internet is privatized. The sites that we mostly go to are owned by giant corporations. So privatization uses social means of production, but then privatizes the returns. a lot of the innovations that are utilized, say, in your iPhone, were not developed by Apple per se, but were built on top of them. The government, through military spending, was looking to develop all kinds of ways, say for GPS, to be able to locate where enemies are, or to find where enemy combatants could be in an open zone in space. You've got the technology for the internet was developed also by the government. So social funds, money that was paid by taxpayers, is used to develop these technologies, but the returns are coming mostly to private organizations, which are able to private, put copyright on it, and then move. Think about interoperability, for instance. It's really annoying that you can't move all your data, say from Facebook, directly onto Instagram. And part of it is because they want to wall you in. They want to keep you there. Technically, it's possible, but the business models are what prevent things from happening. So my question is, are we trying to make humanity better, or are we trying to make profits? And the argument might be that, profits definitely lead to more returns, lead to, people making more, and it's a signal for you to say that there's something productive there. I get all of that. But my question is, profit at what cost? There are supernormal profits that we're seeing. It's no coincidence that the 1% during the pandemic made an exorbitant amount of wealth. 1% of the population of this planet now owns 50% of all wealth. And largely it's because we are utilizing the platforms that they've created. And that brings me to the platform economy. The McKinsey Global Institute discloses that in 2020, about 20 to 30% of the working age population in the United States was entangled in a precarious world of independent work. And largely this is because of platforms. So when I talk about platforms, it's a form of business that connects demand with supply. But it's tempting to think of them as sort of a marketplace. Like whenever I go into Amazon, I think of it as a marketplace. But it's not really a marketplace. Yanis Varoufakis, the former Minister of Greece, former Minister of Finance for Greece, has written a good book called Techno-Feudalism. And his argument there is that when you enter into an Amazon, it's not like you're entering a shopping mall and just seeing what is being presented. Because when you enter a shopping mall, when Alan and I enter a shopping mall, when he decided to buy me a nice outfit because he thinks I'm pretty, you're never going to live down the allegations. When he decides to buy me a shirt, it's because we're looking at the same thing. You walk into a Acacia Mall and you're seeing the same shops. But if he and I logged onto Amazon right now, what he's seeing is going to be different from what I'm seeing. So in fact, the algorithm is such a way that Jeff Bezos is able to determine what you see. He's able to determine what options you have. Now that goes beyond just capitalism. That's a point where the person is effectively owning what you see and collecting rents off of it. And I think the danger there is that as we try to platformize the world, we also have to think about what are the rights of the people who are going to be seeing the things that are going to be on those platforms. It cannot be it cannot be left without reign. It cannot be left without some kind of control. And unfortunately, especially for those of us in East Africa, the regulators, the people who are the lawmakers, I don't think have fully grasped what's going on. It's a dangerous thing. I think that only two countries right now effectively own big tech. That's China and the United States. So we're all downstream of the things that they're building. And even as we try and adopt those methodologies, we have to remember that we don't have a third world to take advantage of like they did. We will be taking advantage of our own people. Now, when I talked about profit versus people and navigating the startup world, Nielsen's survey lays bare that 66% of consumers are willing to sacrifice their hard-earned money for products and services from morally conscious enterprises. Now, let me stop here for a minute and explain why that's a very weird thing. If you think of philanthropy is usually people who've made it big in the capitalist realm and are now giving back. And the irony there often is that during the day, you're causing the things that are causing people to lose their homes or is raising the prices of products and services. And to assuage your guilt, you sort of give some money back to make them, sort of make you feel like you've done your part to help humanity. When someone says, well, buy this cup of coffee or buy this, it was locally sourced and the farmers are going to get a fair market price, often what's happening is we're being told that through consumption, we're able to stop the exploitation of the people that are bringing us the products and services we have. If you think of the diamond ring industry, for instance, there's now a new trend about people saying these are blood-free diamonds, these are conflict-free diamonds. You play just a little bit more, but if you look at the economics behind it, all you're doing is, say, paying $100 more, and then they'll give back $7 to the people who are doing the actual work, the dangerous work of excavating those diamonds and getting them to you. So in effect, I think there is a sort of disavowal of what is happening by us saying we're going to pay a little bit more as long as the company appears morally conscious. And it's no mistake that when you look at Silicon Valley now, everyone has to have a humanitarian approach. Everyone is saving the world. Everyone is trying to connect everyone else. Everyone's trying to bring joy. And when you go to LinkedIn, everything's kind of bland because no one really has a personality. Everyone has become sort of purchase me because I'm safe. It's like there is no danger with the things that we're doing. And I think that's a dangerous road because we don't, in a time when our attention is so split across so many different things, at a time when you don't really know the business practices of so many industries that you're engaged in, it's very easy for you to then start to look at personalities, to start to look at people. And that's the other big thing, the cult of personality that has become the startup world. They're not investing per se in the company, but they're investing in you and your dream and your vision. I mean, dreams and visions are good, but ultimately what we need to look at is what is the effect of what you're doing to the place that you're in. I'm very excited to be in Kampala. I'm very excited to be building a startup of my own, but as you can tell, I'm quite conscious about how we get there. What kinds of things are we building? What kind of business models are we going to be pulling together? And I think without this debate, without us sort of having this dialectic where we say the thesis is startups are always good and they're going to be the way out, and the antithesis which I'm presenting is that they're one of the solutions, they're one of the arrows, but we have to be careful about the large promises that are being made, the large amounts of money that are going to be pulling all kinds of nefarious individuals, all kinds of incentives to cheat, to make off and exploit people. And because of those concerns, we need to find a way in which we can hold each other to account. One of the things I'm proud of is, for instance, FITSPA, which is the FinTech Association of Uganda, was created to sort of create a housing body, to create ethics around how we operate. And if you're going to operate in Uganda, especially as a FinTech, FITSPA exists as that body that is meant to police you. But even that, I think the higher goal is to create better legislation, to create a better enabling environment so that, things like what happened with Dash, where, you start up a company, you hire lots of people, and then you decide to just dismiss them because, you want to get a higher profit return or you want to get to a higher seed funding. People are treated like dispensable resources, which I think is very painful. Stalin once said that one death is a tragedy, a million is just a statistic. And when you hear these numbers, like earlier in the year when Facebook and Google and Salesforce and all of these were firing thousands of people while at the same time making record profits, I don't think that's something that we want to see here. Being Ugandan, being East African myself, it's an exciting time in our industry. I think we have the chance to write new rules. We have the chance to see startups that are not only making benefits for the owners, but making benefits for the communities. We have different ownership structures that we can bring together. I think let's not just copy and paste, but let's have a critical examination. Like the quote I just had where Stalin said that one death is a tragedy and a million is just a statistic. It's important for you to think about the human beings that are being affected in this arena. Think of the young people who are at campus who are being told that they need to start businesses in order for them to be successful. I would think that if we have more successful businesses, people can just become employees and have some rights and have some benefits that they can enjoy and be able to afford the kinds of goods and services that we're trying to work on. The neoliberal approach of maximizing returns at all instances is irrational because effectively what happens is there have to be massive losers. You end up with monopoly winners. And I, for one, don't think I would want to look back at my life and think that I've built something that is going to cause a large rise in inequality between us. Inequality already exists between us and the developing world. I don't think we should add to that. So startup culture is really good. The innovation hubs can be quite fun. They do lend themselves, obviously, to hype a lot of the time. So I would say if you're ever in a talk, if ever you hear me saying stuff that you think is really too much hype, you should call me out on it, because it's infectious. You know, the incentives for me as someone who's running a company like this is to paint it all as it's going to be joyous and there's not going to be a lot of chaos, and failure is a lesson. All of that could be true, but it's also tempered by the fact that the way I treat my employees, the way we treat our customers, the way we manage data, the way we interact with other organizations has to be done in such a way that we are part of an ecosystem that's growing, and there's no need for me to be that dominant player in that ecosystem. We can all win because there's so much more for us to do together than there is for us to do by competing against each other. Now, thank you very much for watching the show. Before I close it, I wanted to give a reminder of Raremark Foundation, which is focused on raising money and raising awareness of sickle cell. You can find the information. I think Alan will put up a certain thing covering my face right now, showing where you can donate. If you want to learn more about it, please go to Raremark. Please look up Sick Conversations. I'm going to put that in the description as well. The goal that we have is to be able to create a sickle cell awareness center or a sickle cell treatment center in Uganda. It's an ambitious dream, but for people who are dealing with this chronic illness, it's important for us to show that we're in solidarity. And I think that moves in step with what I'm saying, that while we make a lot of money, while we do these startups, while we try to have ambitions to make humanity better, not everything that is going to make humanity better is going to be profitable, but it's going to be beneficial for us all. So let me know what you think. Was I too harsh on startups? Was I a little, too kind to them? I don't know. It's still an evolving conversation that I have. All I know is that healthy skepticism has never steered me wrong. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.